we've got here Michael, aka Multifaceted Monster, and Millie Blooms. But what I want to begin with is, first of all, where are both of you in the world right now?
I'm currently in South Wales, United Kingdom, and it's 11 a.m. here.
I'm in the United States. I'm in California more specifically, and it is 3 a.m.
One of you's in America, one of you is in Wales, and you've just collaborated on a new single. But how did this form? How did this come about? And how did you guys sort of discover each other?
Instagram was the way that we ended up connecting. I believe I heard a song of Millie's, followed her, reached out to her, and then she followed me back. We started chatting, and then we just almost immediately started talking about collaborating. And she vibed with my music, I vibed with hers, and we decided like, hey, let's do something together. And we kind of just started talking from there. And then as time went on, we ended up actually collaborating and just working on some stuff and just chatting and actually becoming really cool.
I mean, personally, I feel like I have such a love-hate relationship with social media. I don't know how you guys feel about it, especially as musicians as well, because I feel like there's such a beauty in it. And even the fact that you guys were able to produce this piece of art and music because of social media. But also I feel like as a creative, there's such a pressure on social media. Like, what is your relationship like with it, Mills?
I think anyone who looks at my social media platforms will quickly realize that I'm not a huge lover of spending much of my life on there. For me, it's not a particularly enjoyable space. I'm a musician. My passion is being in the studio working on creative projects and, lots of collaborative projects like this one with Multifaceted Monster. So for me, my time on social media is kind of just like looking for things that I find joy in. And as Mike said, he'd reached out to me and I came across a song that he dropped called Misery Lives Company. And if I'm honest, there's very little that kind of comes up that's fresh, that really resonates. And that track just hit like it was, this beautiful hip hop piece with another vocalist called Songstress. It had a really beautiful conscious message. And I just messaged back and I was just like absolutely vibing with this track and did like a little promo out, sort of shouting out like come across this artist. And then lo and behold, we've developed this really lovely friendship online where we have like coffee and Zoom hangs and got chatting about different collaborative ideas, to which Mike sent me a number of tracks from his producers in America. And yeah, we've just been working ever since.
You've mentioned there the track, but which is When It Rains, It Pours. Could you tell us a little bit about it? Because it's quite a personal and heavy topic.
I initially wrote it thinking about my issues with addiction, with alcohol addiction. That's been something that I've struggled with throughout my life. And I've been to rehab, I think, maybe 3 times. I guess the third time's a charm because this is the time it kind of stuck, or at least so far. So I was actually, I wrote the song prior to going to rehab the third time, or at least I wrote my portion and I had the idea for the chorus. And then I reached out to Millie, telling her about it. And then I think it was shortly after I sent it to her, then I actually had a relapse. So it was kind of like in that space of like, the song was like just kind of gave I guess, more depth and reality to the song. And then I ended up going to rehab for this third time. And it was about a lot of the struggles of addiction and just the chaos that comes with the self-destructive behavior, the destruction of relationships around me. And it had cost me like a number of actual good relationships, friendships, relationship with myself, honestly, the whole addiction. But I knew that there was a way out of it eventually, but I just had to be willing to actually get the help and seek the treatment because there was a little bit of defiance. And part of me was like, I had that age-old belief that pain makes for great art. It's an old saying, and I think subconsciously, even knowing that I was like being self-destructive, part of me had held on to that idea that, well, if I get help and get better, then I'm not going to be able to make music as well as I am or was, but not knowing that that was destroying myself in the long term. And yeah, eventually I reached out to Millie, and then I told her to just kind of do whatever she does. Like, not really. I had an idea, but I was like, if you have something different as far as your verse, then by all means, go ahead. And she came up with a really good concept of being my inner voice, my inner dialogue about addiction, and then it came out really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. You put a real little Millie stamp on it. I love it. Now, you were sort of saying there how you had this sort of idea and narrative that pain leads to good art, but now have you kind of been able to reframe it in maybe a way of your art is a catharsis?
Yeah, for me, it's now that I've actually grown and gotten to a better headspace. I'll say that that's not the case. Like, art is art, and just depends on, yeah, painful experiences can be translated into music, but it doesn't mean that I have to destroy my life in order to make a song, in order to have a painful experience to be passionate about it. Like, there are good experiences that we can be compassionate about with music and love and relationships, friendships. And I've learned that you can channel all that as well. And you can still have the negative emotions that could be channeled, but at the same time, life doesn't have to go down the drain where you don't have any type of longevity because you're destroying yourself through whether it's drugs, alcohol, self-harm, allowing yourself to spiral with depression, anything like that, anything that can be self-destructive overall.
Yeah. Millie, being asked to collaborate on such a personal song, how did you sort of take on that challenge?
Honestly, it was easy. I mean, Michael and I had spent quite a bit of time hanging out, building a friendship on, during our coffee hang. And it was just, I mean, when I'm songwriting with anybody, it's very much about getting to know them and kind of getting into their head and heart and understanding their experiences and their perspective. So, I kind of hit him with a lot of quite personal conversations to extract, I guess, an understanding of like where he's been and, where he's trying to go. And then, as he said, I kind of came up with this idea of being like the inner dialogue, because I just thought that would be like an interesting relationship between the two voices. So yeah, it was quite easy because I kind of, I had Michael's background, so I knew what he'd been going through and I knew what he was trying to do to make that change into a life of sobriety. So there's lots of references to things that Michael actually said to me during those conversations that are, that are in the part that I delivered. And I was just really inspired. I mean, I've never suffered from addiction. I'm lucky that that's not something that I've ever made a part of my space. But when you see someone who is going through something so challenging and you can see all of the hard work that is consistently going in to make a change, that's just so inspiring. And, I think from my point of view as like a voyeur, if you like, I think addiction is a lifestyle, much like music is a lifestyle. It can absolutely consume you. And I think that can be a negative thing or a positive thing, like anything in life, it's moderation. But actually, Michael has been turning, the managing the addiction into something so positive, because he's been doing some incredible work fundraising for a sobriety charity back in California. So I'm just really proud of my friend, and it was like, it was lovely to be asked to, collaborate on this and like help share such a valuable message. But yeah, I'd love Michael to kind of, say more about the good work he's been doing.
Please tell us all about it.
There's a foundation that I got hooked up with. It's called the Anonymous Hope Foundation. And what they do is provide housing and also scholarships for people who are early in recovery or like kind of just getting out of their addiction, just kind of coming, some people fresh off the streets. They could be leaving just, I don't know, dirt situations like jail, or because drugs and alcohol can lead you pretty much anywhere. The foundation gives people opportunities to kind of get their life in order and get into a headspace where they can start to rebuild their life again, given that they actually want to do it, because it is something that takes some effort. But having a place to do it, where the Anonymous Foundation, they provide sober livings, for example, and it gives people like an environment where they can actually, number one, they're held accountable because you have like drug tests, you have like certain criteria you have to meet in order to be at these places. But it gives you a foundation and you're around other people that are in recovery as well, that have a common goal to stay sober and clean or whatever it is. And yeah, so the founder of the Anonymous Hope Foundation, I was able to link up with him through another friend in order to put on a music event that became a fundraiser for the scholarships for the Anonymous Hope Foundation. So we put on the performance, gathered up myself with, I think there was about 5 other artists of different genres. There was a band, there was a R&B artist, there was myself, which is alternative rap. There was another hip hop artist. There was a singer, just to kind of, I don't know, my background with music, like I love all types of music. So I just felt like it should be kind of like a culture fuse with music, not just one genre. And which actually ended up being a really good turnout because it just allowed, I guess, different people that vibe with different music to come out and enjoy something. But yeah, we were able to raise some money for people that couldn't afford scholarship or the funds to be able to move into sober living initially. So we were able to partner with the Anonymous Hope Foundation. And it was really life-changing because I myself have gone through these types of places. Like I've been to treatment centers, been in sober living, and had people around me and still have people around me that have supported me in that way to help me start to rebuild my life. So it definitely is dear and close to my heart because it's something have been through and I'm currently going through, and it's a lifelong journey to be able to remember. Because right now I'm like 9 months and like 5 days sober. So if I look back to October 18th of 2023, which is my sobriety date, and my actual birthday is October 17th, 2023. And like most addicts or alcoholics, they're going to go crazy on their actual birthday before they, if you know you're about to stop, you're like, I'm going to go crazy. At least you kind of have an idea that you're going to stop. But yeah, like I think back to how I felt that day, like just broken and shattered in every aspect, emotionally, physically, mentally, just exhausted and tired. And like having somewhere to go and having people that actually have been through it gives you hope because you're like, wow, these people have been through it and they're okay. So it gives you that sense of hope where it's like, okay, let me surrender to the process of what recovery and sobriety looks like, because it doesn't always look pretty. It's not always easy, but it's a simple process, but it's just not easy.
This might be too personal, but I often it takes so much courage to even recognize and admit that you've got an addiction. But how, like, sort of what was it that was that real catalyst for you of, I need help and I can't keep doing this anymore?
It was a build up to a number of things. I think the straw that broke the camel's back was it was a relationship that ended. So an ex-girlfriend of mine, we were living together and I was suffering from my addiction. I was spiraling, and it got to the point where I was like calling off for work, missing work because I was in and out of the hospitals, and she was trying to help get me sober and back and forth to hospitals. And I had like 5150s because like once I get into that dark place, I'm like, just whatever happens, and ending up in hospital beds and chained to hospital beds. And it took her finally her growing tired of the situation where she saw that she could not help and she had ended up leaving. So the heartbreak, I think, was kind of like the icing on the cake. Like, although I know it was due to my conduct to myself and being active in my addiction, I think heartbreak was like the ultimate thing, in addition to all the other stuff. Like once like that reality set in, like, oh, she's gone. This is someone I was like, had a plan to spend my life with. And then I had the work that I was doing, which was in jeopardy because of my addiction. And then just music that was in jeopardy. Like, I was like, if I keep going at this rate, everything's like, it's pretty much, I was, had given up on life, and it became like suicidal, to be honest. And that's what ended up with the 5150s, because I feel like I had no more of a relationship. The job was about to lose, music was about to be destroyed. So I just felt like hopeless. And then I had, fortunately, a few friends that had been around me the first 2 times I went to rehab, and they always had their hand out, like, we're here if you need help and if you want the help. And I knew who to call when I felt like that moment of had a moment of clarity where I'm like, there is a way out of this. So it went from like that suicidal, heartbroken, devastated, which the heartbreak, it takes time to heal from. But I knew that there was a way to get out of the addiction if I just was willing to reach out to someone. I didn't know how to do it, but I knew there was people who had done it before.
You know, anyone out there who's maybe struggling with addiction, what would be your message and advice to them?
There is a way out of it. It doesn't have to be, addiction doesn't have to be a death sentence. And also, more importantly, like, I suffer from, like, alcohol was my drug of choice, but there are other substances out there. And I think right now a pandemic is with fentanyl. So for the people who are struggling, wherever they are, like, when I was younger, you could like test drugs out and try stuff, and you could be like, "Oh, I'm just going to try and experiment with it." Now you try something, and it could be marijuana, it could be anything, and it'll be laced with fentanyl, and you die. So like there is like almost immediate death in these like just trying drugs. So the message I would say is, despite what anybody thinks, despite the stigmas, or if people think, oh, it's weak or it's this or that or whatever people say to steer you away from getting help, whether it has to be, for me, it was therapy. For me, it was going to rehab. It was joining a 12-step program in order to put myself around people who saw a sobriety as a positive thing, as opposed to a negative thing or a weak thing, or you can't hold your liquor, because you had to put yourself around people who were like-minded when it comes to addiction, who are not going to guilt you, because I mean, we're all susceptible to peer pressure. So in the early stages, you have to put yourself around people who view it as a positive thing, and who are going to uplift you, because it is difficult.
What I loved about the song is, you know, I've not suffered with addiction, and I know Millie hasn't either, but it's the human condition to go through low times, to experience heartbreak. And that's such a universal thing. And I think what I love is your bit, Millie, of like that message. And I think you kind of say it's that fight of that voice in the head being like, hang on a minute, you're doing all the things to stop me and make me go away and for you to be better. And that's something like anyone can relate to, no matter what it is they may be going through. And I think that's definitely something is, look, you don't have to be an alcoholic, you don't have to have an addiction, but there's so many things that humans experience. And actually, it's all, I mean, I would never want to oversimplify addiction, but they're just quite basic things that we can do as people to try and get back to that place.
Like you say, the human condition is we go through hard times and our coping mechanisms are often destruction. We make choices of destruction to try and plaster over, you know, whatever it is we're trying to work through. Or maybe we're not trying to work through it and we're just plastering it so that we can pretend it's not happening. Yeah, you know, and it's like, yeah, in the rap section, I talk about, you know, oh, you don't want to come and have a drink with me. You're going to the gym now, you know, you're looking after yourself. And actually, it's really hard to make good, healthy choices and stick to them and make that a lifestyle choice. But, you know, the benefits are, yeah, really bountiful. And I just think it's really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, it's like a real message of hope for everyone out there. Is, you know, doesn't matter how dark things get, you know, you can come through the other side and have a really beautiful life, which I think is amazing. I know you'd mentioned there, Mike, about the fundraiser that you'd started, and it was kind of a melting pot of all different genres of music. But what was both of your journeys into music?
My foundation was and is poetry. And younger, I was just always inspired by other artists that were around me that were older. And I started off with poetry, and then I was listening to it, and I'm like, well, this is pretty much the same thing. It's just they have a beat behind it. It's just poetry on a beat. That's how I started to look at it. So it just started to transition into my later years of like, I was always listening to different bands and different rap artists and just being inspired by it. And it wasn't until maybe my, say, 20s, early 20s, maybe early teens, that I actually started to write music and write rap songs, and continue to do so and just develop a sound and develop more of a poetic style. And I never let the foundation of poetry go, but think I've been heavily influenced by different bands in addition to a rap artist, where I just didn't fall into the category, I guess, of your traditional hip hop artist or what I suppose it's supposed to look like for me. And just continue to develop a sound of that was just my own. And yeah, it's come to this point now where I've incorporated just life experiences that I've gone through, and fortunately I've been able to find some people that relate to that.
Music, it's always been such a huge part of my life. Like, I think it started for me in school. I was like, in the school choir and in the school orchestra, I played flute. And then at 16, I got myself a little job in a recording studio in Cardiff. And that was kind of where I first started cutting my teeth, and I was taught engineering and production and songwriting and performance. And it just kind of grew from there. And, throughout my life, then I went and studied at university and did a degree in music. And, I've done lots of mentoring programs, working with other aspiring artists to support their development, sharing all of the knowledge and the experience that I've gained. But in the early days, again, it was very much about collaboration. In the early days, I couldn't write music myself. I was just a top line writer. So I was a lyricist, and, I'd write lyrics and melodies. So I would be going anywhere that would have me and jumping on a record and collaborating just to get experience and opportunity. And with that became lots of multi-genre works. That led me to do hip hop, drum and bass, pop. I toured with a rock band for 7 years, like throughout the UK. Even went over to America and worked in like New York and went on like Sirius Radio. So I've had little links with like the States prior to this passion project like Mike and I are now sharing. And it stayed with me. And now I've got my own recording studio, and I work a lot with other artists, like supporting them bring their works to life. I release myself. And I think it's a lifestyle. It takes you to places, it introduces you to people, and it gives me purpose. I've got my day job that pays my bills and keeps things ticking over, and this is what makes me excited to wake up in the morning.
Being able to work with so many different types of artists, and this is for both of you, how has that helped your own music?
People work in all kinds of ways. So it's just lovely to kind of be exposed to, I don't know, a different songwriting format, or a different way of expressing a lyric, or a different performance style, or somebody will approach harmony stacks differently to you, or, they'll just kind of take a concept to a whole new space that you maybe wouldn't have, taken it. Or like when I run sessions, I've got kind of like little songwriting openers so that we kind of like develop a core concept and we build ideas. And it's just beautiful because, you get to know people, really get to know people, because I think music is such a personal experience. It's one of those environments where I feel you can bond really quickly with other people, because it's just a very connective personal thing that you're sharing, bringing ideas to life.
Like Millie was saying, people have different methods. Like some people would rather get together, sit down and brainstorm and have like a session, whether it be over like Zoom or what's the other one? Discord, just to sit down and have a session where they're like, let's go over this beat and then find a beat. Then we can bring up a concept. And I'm always open to however different ways. Like it expands my knowledge and way of doing music as well. And yeah, people have their these different methods, and it just teaches you a little bit more. It's like we all are able to learn from each other and learn the different ways of how it goes, because some people, a random thought pops on their head, they write a song on a napkin, and then later on they bring it to a session, and that becomes like a big part of the song. So it's always interesting to see people's different methods and ways of creating. Like I definitely enjoy it.
Yeah. And I mean, you've kind of briefly touched on it already, but this song in particular, how was there a lot of back and forth, or was it quite like a straightforward, simple thing of Millie, write your bit and then we're good to go? Or was there like, oh, I like this, but can you change it a bit? Like, how was all of that?
For me, it felt like a really linear experience, actually, because we kind of hung out, and had a session where we discussed the track and the concept. And Mike's got a team that he works with in California, a production team. So from my side, I just said, can you get your producer to send me your recorded parts over the beat so I can see where the spaces are that you want me to interject. And then I've got my own studio, so I was able to record all of my vocal parts, my side, send all of the stems in a folder online to his production team so that they could produce the track as a whole and have, full control of the sound that they wanted to create. Um, and then, if I'm really honest, it was really simple, wasn't it, Mike? I mean, I don't feel like we really had any bumps where there was like, I don't like that, I'm not feeling that. If anything, it was more like, I'm really excited by that. Shall I add another little vocal in there? And like Mike came back to me and he was like, I love how you've expressed the chorus, because Mike actually wrote the chorus hook lyrically. And then I took that on and kind of delivered it in my performance style. Mike came back like, I'm really vibing that, and then actually layered in a sung part himself. So it kind of just organically, I think, took form and grew.
For those people out there who maybe haven't heard of the song or haven't heard a lot of your music before, what references would you maybe give to this song that people kind of get a feel for what it would be all about?
Yeah, it's hard for me to compare. Like, I know one reference, like, or like collaboration that makes me think sort of this collaboration will be like when I think it's B.O.B. and Haley Williams from Paramore did Airplanes.
Yes, when I listened to it, that was 100% like what I could hear. And just as a final thing, where can everyone check out Rains Its Paws?
It's on Spotify, it's on YouTube, it's on pretty much all the streaming platforms.
Finally, before we go, are you guys going to try and see each other in real life at some point?
I've told Mike he's welcome to come and stay here in Wales anytime. Mike, mi casa su casa, bro. You come over, you've got family here, and yeah, we can get in the studio and write a track in person.
It's definitely been a conversation when you brought up where I'm like, okay, I think I could plan some time for next year.
Brilliant. Well, the one thing I would say is expect rain, but a very, very, very friendly place.
You know what they say, Caitlin, when it rains, it pours.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, too good.